You are listening to your auntie's favorite DJ, DJ Treacy Tree.
What the pot? What the pot? What the pot? What the pot?
What's going on, y'all? It's DJ Treacy Trees, and welcome back to What the Pod. I decided to record this show live. So if you are on any of my social medias, I'm actually recording this live here in LA. So welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Just decided to do this today. So rock with me, okay? Today's show, I have 3 new podcasts, of course, that we are going to listen to, or that I listen to. I suggest you listen to. But I want to start off today's show talking about my experience at Black Pod Fest. I had the opportunity of going to Atlanta, Georgia this weekend to a podcast conference called Black Podcast Festival. And it was put on by the Black Pod Collective. So you can follow them on Instagram or on any other social media network by that handle. But it was an awesome time. I actually got to speak. It was like the first time that people were actually listening to me in a uniform kind of a way, talking about podcasts. So that was really dope. It was really dope. I met a lot of fun people. I'm going to be talking about a lot of the podcasts that I met, hosts that I met at the conference, and featuring some of their podcasts here, just so you can kind of get a flavor for it. But I'm also authentically going to be checking out a lot of their podcasts. So shouts out to the Black Pod Collective for putting on such a great event this weekend, all the way in Atlanta, Georgia. It was nice for Memorial Day as well. So coming up off that holiday, I got some podcasts for y'all to listen to. Jumping right into today's show. For those of you that are new to the format or who haven't checked it out, if you go to the comments or the link description in any of the channels that you see this podcast on, there will be a link to my Spotify playlist where I list each episode that I talk about on this show. So it's a nice running list of all the episodes that I talked about. I just did a recent cleanup here. So you'll see that it's nice and tight. It's only a couple there, but that is going to be my home base for the show, where you can see all the podcasts that I'm suggesting that you listen to. So just bookmark that on Spotify, save it, do whatever. But all right, jumping into today's episode, the first podcast that I am checking out and telling you to check out is one that's called NewsWorthy, right? And I'm doing this mostly because I'm going to send this to my best friend. She constantly watches the news and is like consuming the news in different ways. But I don't think you should be consuming that much of the news. I think the news is a terrible place at this point. You know, you still want to be up on current events, but you don't want to consume it in a way where it's like it's consuming you too. And I thought, dang, are there any podcasts that have this already into it? And it is, you know, there's a daily podcast here called The Newsworthy. Now, I'm not sure what side of the news this podcast is on. So, you know, listen a little bit and take it with a grain of salt, then find one that works, you know, for you. But people are doing news podcasts in this way. Look at this, 10 minutes, 12 minutes and 30 seconds. Social media law blah. It just gives you a quick synopsis. It's got some words here as well, but then you just listen and have your news in 13 minutes. So if you're somebody who doesn't like to watch the news, or you don't like to read the news or anything like that, this might be a great podcast for you to check out. The host is named Erica Mandy, Mandy, for anybody who is listening but not watching me on YouTube or anything like that. And the podcast is called NewsWorthy, updated every single day. Check that out when y'all get a chance. The second podcast that I'm saying you should go check out. Now, this one came out a while ago, but it popped up on a curated playlist that I am a member of on Podyssey. So it showed up there, and I decided I want to check it out today. So it says, Nothing Beats a Failure But a Try by Kaya Henderson. And it says Kaya Henderson has spent a career reimagining urban education for the 21st century, but Kaya's faith in her own potential is tested during her first semester at a top-tier school when she falls short of her own standards. Kaya's executing mother helps reframe her perspective on failure, turning what feels like the end of the road into a loving provocation to push on. So this is a story, right? This podcast is called Meditative Story, and it really, I think, is a cool, refreshing way to just take yourself out of people constantly talking at you on the podcast, on different podcasts, and to give you a story that you can follow for a specific theme that you might be going through in your life, or that you can pass on to somebody else that's going through there. So, an escapism pod, if you will. I'm going to check it out. I haven't checked out any of these podcasts, and this one came out December 2020. So this was right like during the pandemic, almost 2 years old on this episode. But again, the cool thing about podcasts is that it doesn't matter when the actual podcast launched. If the information is relevant to you, like, it's evergreen. So you can just listen and binge listen. And maybe you find somebody, a new host that you're going to follow on social media, and then you follow them to social media. So that's why podcasts are so dope, because you can connect, find content that you specifically like and you are looking for, and then maybe find hosts that are talking about something like that. So check out with me, Meditative Story. Nothing Beats a Failure But a Try by Kaya Henderson. I hope I'm saying her name right. If not, we'll see. All right. And the last podcast is actually a news podcast by a place called PodNews, which is like, I know, right? News podcast. I'm doing a lot with that. But just recently here, there was a big outage on Megaphone, which is a podcast hosting platform. So how people actually upload and, get all the podcasts to you. So it was a huge thing. I work in the podcast industry. So as soon as we came back from holiday break, Megaphone went down, which I was cool with, because it was like, all right, now I get another day. It's like a 9-hour outage. So people were really tripping. But if you are interested in what is happening on a play-by-play basis every single day in the podcast industry, I suggest you subscribe to this PodNews podcast. Here it is here. PodNews, podcasting news, right? They're using SEO way to their advantage, but they also have a really good newsletter that always has industry news in it and gives you a little bit more information. So those are the 3 podcasts that I am checking out today. If you had joined me on any of my social media platforms, thank you so much for viewing. I just felt like doing my show live today. It's going to be uploaded to my Apple and Spotify and everywhere that you listen to podcasts. Of course, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of What the Pod. For those of you who are listening in audio, What the Pod is a podcast that recommends new shows for you to listen to. You can always follow me on social media, on Instagram at DJ Tricey Trice. That's DJ TRICEY. And on TikTok with the same handle, that's DJ Tricey Trice. I'll see you again for another episode of What the Pod real soon. Tap in with me on Instagram and social media if you have any good recommendations. And I'll see y'all soon. Have a good evening.